Well, hello everyone. It's great pleasure to be with you all. I think this is a great collaborative effort between the Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine and a group of experts here in the US under the umbrella of the BrainX community. Before I make further introductions, I would want to thank the Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine. I was invited to their meeting in February. There was the last critical care meeting I attended in person, and I will tell you that it was such an enriching experience. I've had the opportunity to develop great relationships with a wonderful group of people, and it's great to give back to your own country after being educated there. So it's a wonderful opportunity today to see what we're doing together. We're talking about big data today, and like people say, no better time to talk about big data than in the middle of the pandemic. There's been tons and tons of data that's floated around with COVID-19, data of all sorts of shapes and sizes. In fact, we've reached a stage that we don't know what data is to be believable and what's not. So what better time to talk about big data than the era of COVID-19. The definition of data has also changed over the years. I often go back to the 1950s and 60s. If you look at JAMA or the New England Journal in the 1950s, they would publish studies of 20, 25 patients. And those would be landmark studies. Today, it's not unusual to have 500,000 patients in a study or up to 1 million patients in large studies. And so the definition of what is big has also evolved over the years. Anyway, let me quickly get to some introductions. We have three speakers today. First of all, we will have Dr. Piyush Mathur. Dr. Mathur is an intensivist and anesthesiologist at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio. Going back a few years, Dr. Mathur was my attending at Cleveland Clinic when I was a resident and fellow. So he is my boss as well, so to speak. He is the Quality Improvement Officer and chair of the Compliance Committee for the Anesthesiology Institute at Cleveland Clinic. Dr. Mathur did his medical school from the very well-known Armed Forces Medical College in Pune in India, and then completed a residency in anesthesiology and fellowship in critical care at Cleveland Clinic. Like I just said, he's past program director of the Critical Care Fellowship at Cleveland Clinic, and a very well-recognized leader in critical care, quality education, and AI applications in healthcare. He's led several local and national programs, including serving as the chair of the Postgraduate Education Committee, the Coding and Billing and Documentation Committee of the Society of Critical Care Medicine. And I can go on and on about him, but I think I'll limit myself. I will say that it was Piyush's idea about 5 years ago that got all of us together. And he is therefore, he is an expert in machine learning, deep learning. He's the founder of BrainX, which is an AI and healthcare initiative where Piyush, Kamal, I, and work together along with several other people here and collaborate with individuals like Tav. So Piyush will start us off today with his talk on AI solutions, possibilities, and COVID-19. I'll let Piyush go first, and then I'll come back and introduce our next two speakers. Rajesh,
Ashish, just complete introduction because in between you don't want to break. Then I introduce Indian counterpart, and then we start. Once lecture start, we don't want to break that flow.
Okay, all right. So to follow Piyush, we're going to have Dr. Kamal Maheshwari. Kamal is a great friend and former colleague from Cleveland Clinic. He's an anesthesiologist with the Division of Liver Transplant Anesthesia, and he's part of the Department of Outcomes Research at Cleveland Clinic. He is also a world-renowned figure in perioperative outcomes research. In fact, he and I have collaborated on several initiatives together and still continue to collaborate. He is a part of several ongoing multiple observational, multicentric and randomized clinical research trials, and also is very much a part of our BrainX initiative with machine learning and predictive analytics. His special area of interest is prediction of hemodynamic disturbances, and a lot of what we as anesthesiologists and also as critical care physicians do is trying to understand what patients going to get hypotensive and going to need interventions before they actually get hypotensive. So Kamal is going to talk to us today about hemodynamic management with predictive algorithms, his area of interest, and that will be very clinically applicable to what we do in daily practice. And then last but not the least, we are going to have Dr. Tavpritesh Sethi, very well known as Tav here in the US, because people find it very difficult to say his name. But we love Tav, and Tav has been working with us for a long time now. He's a physician scientist and an innovator in the area of digital health and AI and ML for healthcare. And he's built several teams that bridge healthcare and computational sciences. And like we were discussing before the call started, is a unique combination of being a physician who is part of an engineering institute. So he is also faculty in charge of entrepreneurship in addition to his academic responsibilities at IIIT Delhi. He's affiliated with the Department of Computational Biology at the Infosys Center of Artificial Intelligence at IIIT Delhi, and a fellow of the Wellcome Trust DBT India Alliance at AIIMS New Delhi, and he's also a former visiting faculty at Stanford University School of Medicine, Biomedical Informatics. So enough said, but Tav is going to talk about really what can be done. There's a lot of talk about big data, but not enough talk about what can be done, especially in the Indian environment. Tav is going to give us a little perspective about some things that have been done with his talk. It's titled Building Trust for AI ML for Critical Care and Public Health. All right, with that, I will turn it over now to our first speaker. So Piyush, if you want to start.
Ashish, just 1 minute. Let me complete the Indian part. Sorry, no problem. No. Okay. So thank you, Ashish, for beautiful introduction. And this efforts we were trying to make at least for last 1 month, that we should come on a common platform, and really it is a good opportunity that BrainX and ISCCM has come together for a need of our talk. Let me introduce to our expert. I'm Dr. Rajesh Mishra, based at Ahmedabad, and I will welcome Dr. Dhruva Chaudhary sir, who is based at Rohtak, our president ISCCM, nodal officer for the Haryana government, and probably having vast experience, and he himself will explain a lot about corona, about data. Next is Dr. Deepak Govil, president-elect ISCCM, based at Medanta. His experience and his input will be important for us to understand how we take this. Pradeep Rangappa, then so Dr. Subhal Dixit, immediate past president, and based at Pune. Again, huge experience in COVID, dealing his input will be important. Pradeep Rangappa is taking care of the whole of the Karnataka. Is vice president of ISCCM, and doing a lot of work with tele ICU, helping a lot, reaching to a lot of patients, and so his input will be also important how he can. Srinivas Samavedam, our general secretary ISCCM, and he's based at Hyderabad, and so we'll have a flavor of almost all over India and other part of USA. So with this short introduction, again I hand over to Ashish, and we can start the talk. First we'll have our 3 talks, and after that we will take the discussion. But before that, I will invite Dr. Dhruva Chaudhary sir to have a few words about his experience, and then talk start. Dr. Dhruva Chaudhary. And after that, give a few words, and then we talk.
Good evening, my dear friends in India, and good morning to the friends in US. And it's great to see you, Ashish, again. And it was great to see you and sir and ma'am on Facebook. In fact, it was a sense of deja vu because of Professor Khanna being there, and he has been our teacher there at PJ Chandigarh. And thank you.
I'm so happy to to see you back in action. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
when news went around about you being affected by Corona, it was a big deal.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's true.
great to
That's
see
true.
you back in action.
God has been kind. I'm back in action. Just reach back from the hospital. That's why you will see the mask is still around. And nevertheless, it has been like I said it. I wrote it in the critical care. Deepak was a little annoyed with me, though he didn't say so. But he said in his own way, "Please write, boss." So I think with the critical care, this thing I wrote it. What I have experienced a bit of it, more as a public health man than as a critical care. But I looked at it that it is the intensivists who have led the charge more than any other specialities, because most of the people are scared, they're in panic. But all said and done, as an intensivist, we have led it from the front, be it in the north, me, Pradeep, or Deepak, as well as looking at the proactivity of Subhal and Rajesh and Srinivas there. Having said so, I think it has been a great teacher. This has been a very disruptive epidemic. And I'm reasonably certain, not only in the West, but even in Indian context, medicine is not going to be the same. I think what it has made fundamental difference in change in our attitude is to the infection control. If you ask me one thing, where things have gone really changed, is in infection control, whether it's a public sector or it's a private sector. That is one area which I'm looking at it. Secondly, we have also dabbled with it a lot of entrepreneurs from engineering side within artificial intelligence. The people with whom we're Singapore, the young Indians who were using a startups, we are dealing with the lung cancer, being that is one area one of my consultants is interested in it. We have now come up with setting them, putting algorithms at the back, now an app for home application, where we are started sending long. Today itself, we signed the MOU, where we will be doing a home application app and you trying to use it. And the people I saw is coming and trying to use. Yesterday, I got a call from CDAC Mohali, Ashish, you know it. It's one of a very big center, and I'm certain Tavpritesh, if I can call his full name, he is aware about it. We have dabbled with them in basically telemedicine. But what we have realized now, they are looking at it from the Western pattern. They asked me to collaboration of role of AI and looking at in the voice detection of COVID infections. Now, something interesting. I was reading about it a couple of days ago, a couple of people in the universities in USA doing it. But now this is for the first time I'm seeing people coming up with innovative ideas. Can we do it up? And also, we have started looking at, in fact, I am in a teaching institution in a university. I did discuss with the government itself, being a state nodal officer, to have a center for artificial intelligence, and also to have a school of virtual medicine now, because that is where it is realized. And the final thing we are looking, we will be taking up various issues difficult later on. It has also proven that you don't need didactic lectures in the class. Today in the undergraduate MBBS, we are seeing that probably we may continue with the relics, but probably didactic lectures probably have, the days are over now with the technology taking over. We are having 250 undergraduate students in each year, and for last 3 months, their classes are going on through the digital media. And also, what we are realizing in the government also, I think the students initially had a difficulty. So we have started up putting final year students to monitor patients on home isolation. So they are getting now the first time thing of a public health, though they do theoretically a family and all of us from the Indian context. So we know it what I'm talking of in a pre-final year. So I think medical education in particular, if you really ask me, we are looking at a visionary, we look at 10 years down the line, or even this thing, I think it is going to change, a huge change. And when the Harvard first removed the classes, we thought what they are doing, but now it looks they were probably wise enough. So I think there are a lot of issues which have come up. And finally, I think the everyday debate, which today I was on India TV, they were asking about it. The artificial intelligence looking from other places can give us an idea how robust immunity we are going to have. Now, this is something I think BrainX, Dr. Mathur can tell us. And same as for Tav also, or Kamal. Why I'm saying so is because this is something I find very naive debate. You will say maybe very arrogant of mine. No, nothing of that sort. Because somewhere in order to publish or perish atmosphere, we just has been responding knee-jerkly. And I think it's extremely important for us to pick up the right information from this ocean of information which is coming up. And that is where we need algorithms. That is where we need the help of artificial intelligence to tell us what is right and what is wrong. I think we need to have the right algorithms which are running at the back to help us. Already we are using artificial intelligence in intensive care in terms of automation, in terms of other things, without even realizing it, what it is doing for us. I think it's the time for it to come up and tell us, yes, ma'am, we are using it. And you need to be taking it a step further. And that's what I said it. We are all talking about immunoglobulin levels without forgetting it, that what is the half-life of immunoglobulin G. And then you look at it, which is the mother of an immunoglobulin. It is a B. Who is stimulating it? It is a memory cell. Everybody forgot in that cacophony. So that's what I am saying. You are going to tell us it's an artificial intelligence, which will be telling us, simplifying the data so that we can interpret it. I'm extremely poor in mathematics, but I think looking at it, it can tell us, it can help us, and probably the lives of our going to be changed forever. Thank you very much for a patient listening, and I think we will be having a next interesting session, and subsequently we can discuss and take it over.
Deepak, quick comment from you, and then we start.
I think Dr. Dhruv has covered everything, and I am eager to listen to the speakers rather than putting something from my mouth.
So, Dr. Mathur, over to you, sir. Dr. Mathur.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And I think this is a great forum. And Dr. Chaudhary already gave some great opening remarks about the opportunities. And what I'm going to talk about, some of the solutions that have been applied, just some high-level scenarios or presentations of the solutions that already are being applied in critical care. And then, of course, we can't miss COVID-19 at the current point of time. So we're going to talk about a basic overview of artificial intelligence, just a very high-level overview, just to give you some basic terms and familiarity about the process. We're going to talk about some examples of artificial intelligence applications in critical care that are being researched or applied currently, and then some of the challenges and opportunities. So artificial intelligence is a pretty broad term. It essentially is trying to replicate the human brain. It's trying to replicate the human intelligence at a computer level. And sometimes you will find these terms such as machine learning or deep learning or neural networks, but and they can be confusing. But machine learning is essentially about the machine trying to learn either from you or from the data that is made available to it. So it's a subset of artificial intelligence, although these terms are used interchangeably. Deep learning is a further subset of artificial intelligence, where essentially we all understand how the neurons and the synapses and all work. And these deep learning solutions or neural network solutions are trying to replicate how those neurons work and synapses in our brain, and the information is transferred and processed from one neuron to another to make it meaningful information. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview of how some of these algorithms are looked upon in the machine learning world. And there are two classical types of algorithms. One, the supervised one, and the other one, which is the unsupervised one. So let's start with the supervised one and give you a very simple example. In a supervised algorithm or the machine learning model, you're trying to train the machine learning model by teaching it what every single element of data means. So in this particular example, you can see the supervised machine learning model is being built by showing it a few different animals. So you show it a duck, you show it something that is not a duck, and then it learns. And in the picture at the bottom on the yellow, after that, when you show it a duck, it knows that this is a duck because it has learned from what you taught it. That's why it's supervised. And then it can tell you that this is a duck. Whereas in the unsupervised learning algorithm, that is the one depicted in the blue area, you show it a lot of different animals, and it looks like, well, it's got ears, so it cannot be a duck. It's got legs, it's got some spiky thing. So based on those features, the machine learning model or the algorithm determines what kind of an animal it might be, and it predicts that. So then the larger question, I think Dr. Chaudhary was alluding to that, why does the world need artificial intelligence? I give this example of Superman. Now, if you think about the amount of sensory input and the amount of input that a person like Superman would get, that's the kind of noise that we are hearing in our day-to-day work with the amount of expanded data. To filter that noise, you do need a higher amount of capabilities, and to make meaningful interpretation of that information, you do need some extra capabilities, which artificial intelligence represents. So we are going to look at an example. Here is an example. If you look at this picture, it's very clear whether this is male or female. It's male, right? How about this one? When you look at this picture, I think a lot of people would guess that this is a female, but there could be male too, you don't know. How about this one? Can you tell me, is this male or female? All right, so here is an article that was published by the team from Google, where they used machine learning model to look at fundus pictures, and with the area under curve of 0.97, they were able to predict the correct gender of the patient. Now that's impressive, just looking at the fundus. You know, they say beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. When you look at this, here is a perfect example of this. So you would say, well, okay, I'm looking at the patient. Why do I need to predict whether this is male or female? But if you look at further interpretations of that fundus exam, like this SBP or systolic blood pressure, it was able to estimate that within a mean absolute error of 11 millimeters of mercury. Now that's impressive. Looking at a fundus exam and being able to tell blood pressure, that's impressive. It was also able to predict what's the likelihood of this patient having a cardiac event with an AUC of 0.7. So you are able to get a lot more information from certain things that you don't necessarily use routinely and can now use and can help you in making either diagnosis or predictions. Now here is an example of how it works in the background, where you have the electronic health record, which is on the top left corner. You extract the data from that. You have to do a lot of pre-processing steps. And again, this is all a lot of computational heavy steps. You design certain features where you are trying to make meaningful interpretations of the processed data. And then subsequently, you develop the machine learning model, which is represented as those cogs on the right-hand corner. The subsequent steps do need to validate this machine learning model. Then you have to deploy it in a real world environment. And then you have to make sure that it works and is going to work seamlessly and accurately subsequently. Now, for critical care, in 2001, there was this article published in Critical Care Medicine. That is 2001, where they said that AI applications are only going to expand in critical care. And now 2 decades later, we are seeing that. So if you look at from healthcare point of view, where is ICU or where is acute care in many other terms, in terms of application of AI in healthcare, it is actually pretty significant. It's growing with leaps and bounds. And here is something that we published recently, where we looked at the expanded amount of research in the area of AI in healthcare. As you can see, it's really exploding over time period. And here are some examples. Here's a case in point where in this particular article, they looked at complications happening in the ICU. And this was a retrospective data analysis. The blue dots represent a neural network model where they wanted to pick up the complications that are occurring in ICU, whereas in the red dots, that represents the current standard clinical inference tool. And you can see the inference or the prediction of the complications was way superior in relationship with bleeding, mortality, or renal failure when they used neural network tools rather than the standard of care tools. And again, here is the representation and the comparison. So they compared it with the existing standard of care tools, which is like FABS2 or KidGo for renal failure or for prediction of disease states. Here is another example, sepsis. Again, COVID-19, perfect environment, where we have been challenged with prediction of who is likely to get septic or who's going to deteriorate. We, around 40–50% of patients in different ICUs have sepsis, and we need these tools to be able to predict who's going to deteriorate early, or sometimes on the floor who needs to be brought to the ICU early. And here is an example of deployment of this model. So when you look at this particular slide, what they demonstrated in one particular patient, they were able to predict deterioration or onset of sepsis somewhere around 6 to 8 hours ahead of time before it set in and before the deterioration occurred. So these are like real things that are happening out there. Now, here is a tool that we are adopting and starting to use in our everyday life with the point of care ultrasound. We're using echocardiography every single day in the ICU for estimation of LV function or for volume assessments and all. But what's coming next? 2 FDA approved algorithms already, where it is with artificial intelligence is looking at the image and giving you the diagnosis. So it's telling you the estimation of LV function. It takes out the subjectivity, and certain studies it's been shown to be more highly accurate and correlates better than subjective findings from even the cardiologists. So here's the question: how are you planning to deal with your data? And I'm glad that Dr. Chaudhary has presented this great vision for creating these centers and having new ways of teaching or educating our clinicians in application of AI, because with Excel sheet, you cannot manage this amount of data, and you do need these newer tools to do that. So some thoughts about what can you do, because all this might look like really high and heavy and may seem a little bit alien. Well, there are a lot of opportunities. Again, this is a great step in the right direction to learn about it, some basics. Collaboration, just like we will show some examples in the next few talks, are important. Doing some hands-on projects in trying to solve some problems are important. Again, what we're doing over here is sharing this knowledge and showcasing some of these educational products over time period. Always a question: should you try to do it yourself or should you collaborate? In my opinion, the best way to do this is collaborate. And I'm glad one of the speakers, Dr. Tavpritesh, Sethi, later on is going to address that. And I think there are great opportunities to work with our engineering colleagues and in developing solutions of the future. And that's what BrainX community does. We bring everybody together, and that's what we're doing here with ISCCM. So thank you for the opportunity. I also want to highlight that some of the largest data sets that are openly available. So these data sets are open source data sets. You can access them today with minimal requirements that you need to fulfill, belong to critical care. So the PhysioNet data sets, which is for Mimic or for EICU Collaborative, and the Amsterdam critical care data sets, they are actually available to you right now. So even before you think about building your own data set, you could start looking at those and start doing your research work and start developing certain models. So we were all doing this, we were on middle of all this, and then of course COVID-19 hit. And when COVID-19 hit, this gave us a great opportunity to connect with Dr. Tavpritesh in India. And again, as previously expressed, he is very bright, and we have had great relationship with him. And we were able to develop these COVID-19 models, which we have put it in preprint right now. And again, showcasing that if you have the data and if you have the collaborative approach, you truly can build some models. And in this particular case, we looked at the US population and try to understand what are some of the key features of US population in relationship with their geography or socioeconomic standard or medical care that correlate with COVID-19 deaths. And all this was done within a month or so during this pandemic. Again, a lot of challenges. We talk about big data in healthcare or critical care, but it's segregated across hospitals. There is a lot of missing data. There are true regulatory concerns. There are privacy concerns. There is a lack of knowledge amongst engineers and us, so there is collaboration opportunities. There is a lack of unified approach. And again, there are ethical concerns and legal concerns on its use and application. Again, there is a lot of hype too. So let's acknowledge that there is a significant amount of hype too. It's right now on top of the hype cycle. So anytime you say AI or machine learning, some of these buzzwords, they do constitute sometimes. So you have to do the due diligence and be cautious about that. But at the end, I do believe that AI can help us as clinicians in saving lives. That's the real question or a challenge for us rather than AI, how we use it. And I don't think failure is an option. And I'll be happy to take any questions or comments later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Piyush, for laying a great foundation for us as we start our series of talks today. I think you summed it up really well at the end. Failure is not an option, and it is for us to best utilize AI in whatever environment we're working in. I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Maheshwari, and Kamal is going to talk to us about hypotension prediction algorithms utilizing AI and associated techniques. Thank you, Kamal.
Thank you, Ashish, and thanks to the Indian Society for the invitation and to share the work and our excitement towards the future of research, future of medical care, and how we can improve it. So I'm going to go at the specific level, specific examples, how the AI can help. Now, as Piyush mentioned, the AI is a much broader topic. It includes, I believe, 1,000 different things. And one of the things which AI includes is predictive algorithm. And as anesthesiologists, as critical care physicians, the hemodynamic management is one of the key in our day-to-day work, and how predictive algorithms can help in hemodynamic management. That's what will be the topic of my talk. I do want to say that my journey from India is from Rajasthan, and then University of Delhi, UCMS, and then Safdarjung Hospital. And then I moved in 2005 here, and I'm working at Cleveland Clinic right now. And I do want to mention Dr.Deepak Govil, which is one of the face which I recognize for sure, because my mom had surgery a few years back in Vedanta. So thank you, Dr. Govil. With that, so the way I have specified is that the area to focus on is what is the application of artificial intelligence in perioperative medicine, which is OR and critical care. And I call this field as perioperative intelligence. We wrote about it. And the goal here is that what it is, like beyond the predictive algorithm, what are we trying to achieve? So my life at this point of time is focused on the question why we do what we do. And that drives my clinical care, my research. So in perioperative intelligence, there are three components how the AI is eventually going to help. One is identify at-risk patients. So who are the patients at risk, be it the risk of sepsis, be it risk of myocardial infarction, or be it risk of death. So those risk stratification models, though a lot are available, they can be much, much more accurate in predicting the outcomes which we want to do. The second component is early detection of complications. That if something happens, for example, sepsis happened, or if patient have acute kidney injury, because a lot of things are not preventable, but if you detect early, you can do treatment. So that's why early detection of complication, there'll be a lot of work in this area, and because a lot of data will be available. And the third thing is timely and effective treatment. And both timely, that you do it when it's needed, and effective, that means it usually does a job, are important. So these are three areas where artificial intelligence will have huge inroads. The two algorithms, which I'm going to talk about, predictive algorithms, they help in timely and effective treatment. So think about hemodynamic management. And if any solution comes, the question which we always have is why we need any solution, why you're making a decision, for which patients you're going to use that, when you're going to use that, and how it will be implemented. at the point of care, the way the decision support system work, what will be the interaction of technology, it will be app-based or what, that needs to be answered. And what improved? Did it really improve outcomes? So even if you show an algorithms or predictive algorithms which works well with area under the curve and all the mathematical validation, I should say, parameters, but did it improve care? Improve care, improve outcomes? Did it reduce cost? Did it improve outcomes? Those needs to be answered. The first one is Hypotension Prediction Index. Hypotension is the area where we have researched a lot, both in operating room and critical care. We have showed that hypotension is associated with worse outcomes, be it kidney injury, myocardial injury, or mortality. And the logical question was that if it is bad, can we prevent it? And that led to development of this algorithm. And how you develop this thing is based on arterial line waveform. And now this waveform can be, you can get it from an invasive arterial line. And now also there are multiple devices which are available which can give you by non-invasive arterial lines. So whichever way you get an arterial pressure waveform, you can utilize that information. Now this graph, though it's a single stroke, it contains a lot of information. And that led to the formation of Hypotension Prediction Index. So what it says is the likelihood of a patient trending towards hypertensive event. So if I know before even I think from my clinical acumen that, oh, a patient is going to go into hypertension, and if there's an index and I can be alerted, then I can do preemptive strike, if you will, against hypertension by giving appropriate fluid, inotropes, or whatever changes you need to make in the clinical care. The way the algorithm is developed, that on arterial pressure waveform, which I showed you earlier, it can be dissected into 2 million parameters. Yes, it's 2 million parameters, single waveform, single pulse can be dissected. That information is used using machine learning to identify 23 key arterial waveform features, right? So we know that we can see systolic pressure, we can see diastolic pressure. We look into dichrotic notch from time to time, we look into the slope, but they go into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so maximum every person. But now it combines 23 key arterial waveform parameters, which are complex, which we cannot understand the mathematics, and leads to the probability of hypertension in the coming minutes. And this is how the software gets applied. And so now it is important to know how it's applied, right? As a decision support system. And this is, I'm sure you're aware of multiple cardiac output monitors, which gives dynamic parameters and everything. Then it is one of the monitors, and then HPI index becomes one of the new index now, which goes on, like stroke volume variation. And what it does is it predicts hypotension. So it gives you time to think about ahead of time that how you should treat it. And using the different variables, you can decide if it is a fluid issue, it's an inotrope issue, or however you have your practice to manage it. So now first is like the idea about the problem. So hypertension is bad. We want to predict it. Then we build a model. So predictive algorithm is one component. The AI is the one component here, right? So this predictive algorithm then based on the data showed, yes, it predicts hypertension. So you use retrospective data to prove your point, because you know you have the arterial waveform data and you also know when the hypertension happened. So this was published. Then next logical question is, if I apply in a clinical setting in a prospective fashion, what does happen? And before we go there, I just want to show you an example that to put a context around. For example, on the top, you have a mean arterial pressure reading. The red line is a 65 mark. So you can accuse me, but I said a lot in the last 5 years about 65 mark, both for critical care and operating rooms, but it holds true. So if map went below on the right side of the screen, below 65. But if you see screen below, almost 15 minutes before that, you see the HPI index went above 85. So that's the time which you get to treat the patient appropriately, and that's how it is operationalized. So I'll show a couple of studies, and then we'll leave this topic. This is the one which a prospective evaluation of hypertension prediction index in the practice. Davis has done a lot of work, and he said that, oh, I can just see the trend in map and it'll be all right. I can see the trend in cardiac output, it'll be all right. I can predict everything. And it shows the performance. So if you look into the right side graph in the area under the curve, that means the larger area in the curve means a better performance. Into discrimination that, yes, the algorithm was able to define hypertension or not. And all the other parameters are there, stroke volume index or SVB, and you see high HPI, which is the red line, perform better. And it is obvious it performed better because it includes all the information, because it has 23 complex arterial waveform features. So there's no surprise that it performed better because it's a combination of all these. So I'm ingrained mostly into hardcore research. I'm a very skeptic person, and that's why I think I'm a researcher. So I'm going to talk about 3 trials which happened, and we are a part of all of them. So first is the Cleveland Clinic prospective evaluation of HPI. So now we have developed the algorithm. We have shown in an observational cohort that it works. Now question is, in an RCT fashion, does it work or not? Because that is the ultimate gold standard of evidence which we can provide. In this, you take 2 groups, you give HPI information to the clinician in one group, and you don't give the information in the other group. And what is your outcome? You were trying to prevent hypertension. So the question is, did the hypertension reduce? So that's the central question here. So our trial, which we did, it was 214 patients. RCT is finished. Day before yesterday, I got an acceptance from anesthesiology after months of peer review, and hopefully it will be, but I'll show you some data. There's a US multi-center single arm trial, which was on 11 centers. This is also finished. We are analyzing the data. And University of Amsterdam, our colleagues, they actually finished a 68 patient trial, and it's already published. Okay, so here are the results from our trial. If you give hypertension prediction index or not, it did not change amount of hypertension, right? So with all the promise, what we thought that is going to happen, it was very surprising. But importantly, you have to understand in clinical setting what happened. So 50% of the time when the alert happened that HPI was high, nobody believed in it and did not do anything. You cannot force clinician to do anything, even in a research setting. And we have a lot of data which we have put into the paper to show that has happened. But if, hypothetically, if we have intervened into all alerts, it would have reduced hypertension by half. So that's pretty impactful. And again, so I would not say that this is a confirmatory evidence, but I would say that it points in the right direction that yes, it works. The University of Amsterdam trial, which was a 68 patient, exactly same design, we developed it together. They were able to publish it earlier and finish it earlier than us because it was a smaller trial. And also, they have a baseline high incidence of hypertension. So there's a 2 difference. It was published in JAMA a few months back, and they were able to reduce the hypertension by 4-fold, like 400%. So what it means is your baseline amount of hypertension does matter. if we at Cleveland Clinic were already aggressive in hypertension management, then any new technology, how much it can change is difficult to say. But if you have a baseline high incidence of hypertension and you use this technology and follow the alerts, right? All the alerts are followed by treatment, then you are 400% improvement, which you can have. So overall, current status of evidence is that this prediction index does predict hypertension. There's no doubt about it. And also, you have to do it timely. The same theme which I started with, you have to do timely action, and appropriate treatment has to be instituted. And if you get the prediction information and you don't do anything about it, then it's not the fault of algorithm per se. But a lot more work in the prediction of hypertension, and a lot more different products, different companies are working towards it. And this is the area, I think this is how hemodynamics will be managed going forward. The second algorithm which we're going to talk about is assisted fluid management. And this goes to the heart of goal-directed therapy. So we know that from evidence, though, I'm cautious in saying that high quality evidence, because despite 30 trials, still we are not confirmed that does goal-directed therapy help improve outcomes or not. But mostly the issue is it is never instituted properly, because it is an algorithm, like you have to test something, give a fluid, and that is never operationalized properly, even 30 years of literature. So complexity of application, poor adherence of protocol, and lack of outcome improvement data is a problem, right? So is there any way forward? Like, would we manage fluid still? Let's try it. Or can we be objective about it? So that's why the assisted fluid management algorithm was developed. And the idea was that if you automate the assessment and you just tell, please give fluid, you don't have to think more about it. And the algorithm will do at the back end whatever needs to be done. Can it help improve at least the fluid assessment, right? Well, forget about outcomes. We are just trying to see the primary problem with GDT is like it's not even applied properly, even in the best setting. So this was developed by Edward Life Sciences and the group from UC Irvine, Dr. Maxine, Houston, Reinhardt. I mean, they've been working on this algorithm for quite some time. Edwards Life Sciences took up this algorithm, made multiple modifications, and presented as an assisted fluid management algorithm. Again, at the heart of it is the machine learning based on observational data, which is retrospective, and also some prospective data. And ultimately, you say that, yes, most likely when this happens, the patient will benefit from fluid. That's what the primary question algorithm. So I'm not going into the detail because the focus is the research here. So, regular FloTrac sensors at the back end, the algorithms, how it's developed, I don't think, I don't want to go into that, but I want to show you that you identify the problem, you identify the potential solution, you develop the potential solution, and then you test it. So I'm telling the testing stage here. And this was not an RCT design. This is the first study which we did for FDA approval and as an IDE, investigational device exemption and evaluation. The question was, if AFM guided fluid boluses often result in appropriate stroke volume increases. So the heart of goal-directed therapy is that if you give a fluid bolus, there should be appropriate increase in stroke volume, which is more than 10%, 12%, whichever have you. But you pre-specify, and did it happen or not compared to clinicians. So this single arm study, we finished in 11 centers, major academic centers in the United States. It was more than 300 patients, very rigorously done. We just finished submitting to one of the journals. And this is the key finding here. And this shows the promise, besides all the thing that, some of the algorithms may not work, that whenever AFM recommended fluid bolus, right, and clinician actually did it, right, the amount of stroke volume increase, which I decided already, happened in 66% of patients. That means we achieved our goal in 2/3 of the patients. However, clinicians were also allowed to do their fluid bolus, like whenever they think they were right. When clinician did fluid bolus, and AFM saying that, is not alerting anything, and they gave a fluid bolus, the percent increase in stroke volume was 41%. So in other words, the stroke volume did not increase. That means fluid was not needed at that time. So this is a huge improvement. This is taking complex data, giving a real-time clinical decision support, which is simplifying care, reducing variability. And that's a huge step forward now in the fluid management. And using this, if we say goal-directed therapy is instituted, and then you do outcome studies, you're able to show improvement in outcome, that'll be a path for the coming years for the adoption of this kind of technology. So in summary, what I would say is Hypotension Prediction Index may help automate hypertension prediction and hypertension management, and assisted fluid management may help automate fluid management in like goal-directed therapy. And how they benefit in outcomes, right, real outcomes, that remains to be seen going forward. So I started with the why question for any predictive algorithms, like hypertension reduction, optimal fluid were the questions. Which patient you should identify high risk, when it should be point of care. I don't need this thing running in the background and I get the data 1 month after that. I need right at that instant. So this is that. Automated guidance, appropriate treatment, and what improved the complication rates has to be studied going forward. So once again, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your time, and hopefully someday we'll meet in person.
Thank you, Kamal. It's a really nice talk. At least you brought about some practical applications, and I think you said it really well. And I say it all the time: no amount of monitoring, no amount of devices, no amount of intelligence technologies or machine learning can help us if we don't use the signals that are provided and we don't act on those signals. So if the efferent arm of intervention is missing, then no amount of monitoring, no amount of intelligence, whether human or artificial, is going to help us. I guess that intervention arm is really, really important. I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Sethi. He's going to talk about the healthcare applications in public health and critical care of AI and machine learning. And then after Dr. Sethi is done, then we'll open up the forum for questions, answers, and discussion.
Thank you, Ashish. I'll just start sharing my screen.
Any problem in sharing? Not able to share?
No, I'm sharing right now. Can you see my screen now?
Okay.
Great. Let me go into the presentation mode. So yeah, meanwhile, I think it's a great honor, and I think it's an opportune moment to talk about AI and ML as it was discussed earlier, because nothing has highlighted the need for data and intelligence in healthcare systems than COVID situation right now. And I hope that we can be doing some of this stuff together going forward, which will change the state. So thank you, first of all, to the Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine, and especially thank Ashish and Piyush and Kamal for having me also talk about some of our work. So I'll be speaking about building trusted AI and ML for critical care and public health. The reason is that if we don't develop that trust of AI with the clinicians or the deployment settings, we may not achieve optimum results because these models will end up not being used. So I'll try to convince, but before I do that, I'll try to set up the stage by looking at what can AI do in general for the current settings. So about 10 days before the WHO alerted and about 7 days before the CDC alerted, a company called Blue Dot based in Canada, Kamran Khan is the name of the founder, it sent out alerts about the possible rise of an epidemic and possibly a pandemic situation. How were they able to do that? They resorted to a lot of data and non-conventional data, not just data from epidemiology, but also data from flights, data from what people were talking about in community forums. And they analyzed a lot of it and raised the alert before WHO and before CDC did that. And why this is important, I think one of the papers that Piyush, Dr. Mathur talked about also analyzed, that we did together, also analyzed some of these data from flights and shows that it also has a bearing on mortality in the US. But yeah, this was way back in, I think in January, and they have been doing it for a long time. They did it for Zika, that was published in the Lancet, and they also did it for H1N1. So they have a history, track record of using AI to predict these public health outbreaks. So in India, we may think that we are probably not at the verge of a transformation, but I would argue the other way. So this analysis by PricewaterhouseCoopers done in 2019 actually says that 59% of patients in India are already using some form of mHealth. So if you can, so you can see that this orange line is the traditional consumers, and then there is this red line, which is the digital converts, and then there is this rising gray line, which is digital natives, people who grow up with technology, people who've grown up with tabs and Android phones as natives. That is rising, and by 2024, it's already taking over the digital converts. So India especially is a huge potential market, both from the social standpoint and from the economic standpoint, to start looking at some of these technologies to be deployed. So a bit of a personal context, why am I speaking about all these things? I started out as a clinical doctor. I did my MBBS from Government Medical College, Amritsar, but then I moved over to do a PhD in computational biology. I found research to be very enticing. That's why I took to research. I was a visiting professor at Stanford University for a couple of years, and have been a faculty member at IIIT Delhi. I'm also associated with the AIMS New Delhi in the Department of Pediatrics as a Wellcome Trust Fellow. And my lab has a goal of building meaningful, enriching, and discovery-led AI for medicine, which are the key things that we want to address while building trusted AI and ML systems. How are we engaged in the current COVID settings? So our lab and IIIT in general is engaged with the Delhi government's response to COVID. So we help with the Delhi Corona app, and the history of that is that we were already building apps such as the Washkaro app, which uses AI and ML and was presented at the WHO for for mitigating misinformation when this pandemic broke out. We are also assisting the war room dashboard of the Delhi government by building state-of-the-art models such as simulation models, which build population scale models for projecting what are the numbers going to look like in the next week or months to come. And all these are available as openly available models. The link is given below. Yeah, so that's our war room projections. We are also supporting war room analytics for Delhi. For example, district level projections and testing projections, again, all in partnership with the Delhi government. Our research in the past 3 months or so, we put out about 7 research outputs and also openly available dashboards for the use of in various areas such as NLP, in explainable models with Dr. Piyush and team, less strong COVID projections with interactive assumptions, things that untangle what happens about temperature and humidity, and also, as I said, building apps that talk about mitigating misinformation by using machine learning. So that's the COVID aspect of it. I'll stop there about COVID. But in critical care medicine and in building trust, the key ideas are these: context, cause, and connect. So healthcare is changing fast. Models that were applicable maybe a year ago or maybe 2 years ago may become outdated. So based upon the context, we need to adapt our models fast. So challenges are imminent. We are no longer siloed. We are already working in collaboration across institutions and hopefully across the globe. So that expands our context from institutions to global. And Kamal highlighted some of that in his talk, where they show that models that need to be built across continents is the flavor of the times in AI and medicine. And there's also an emerging breed of scientists that we need to build, which are the bridges. And those are going to be the key things for building trust going forward. The gap is that we cannot solve what we cannot measure. And doctors do not have the time to measure everything. So we need to put technology and AI into place. And most of the peoples cannot do not afford to lose a day of livelihood. So we need to connect at the ground level, where we actually try to bring a change at the ground level in the lives of people by bringing healthcare to the point of contact. So I'll start by talking about our project at AIIMS, New Delhi, where we have this project called the SAFE ICU project. SAFE ICU stands for Sepsis Advanced Forecasting Engine. We have more than 1 million patient hours of continuously monitored data warehoused. This was all built from the ground up. We wrote our own pipelines and algorithms to automate these data collections. And that is what allowed us to then start asking questions. So the key thing that I want to highlight here is that data is at the root, and it's not that difficult to really put automation systems in place. We may believe otherwise that these systems are expensive. For example, companies may charge up to $3,000 per bed per year to put such solutions in place, but we did all this as a research solution for free. Yeah, so as you can see here, that we really started from the ground up by connecting equipment, trying to get data out, and then moving towards, so it took us about 6 months. It wasn't easy. It wasn't an out-of-the-box solution. So we did not know if we will fail or we will succeed, but eventually it did work. And we did have the data flowing, and then and until now we have about 1 million patient hours, as I said. The next thing that we did was we did not put AI and ML right away. We actually started with what clinicians wanted. So, for example, what was the antibiotic usage in the last 1 week, looking at these data in the ICU, or how much was the time in which my patient was in the right oxygen saturation range by looking at these continuous data. I mean, so these are the kind of questions, and this is already published. This is a little bit old slide. So essentially, looking at some of the very simple quality measures to help with some of these insights. Building antibiograms for our units, but that's where when we had this data as an arsenal, we started asking questions, just as Kamal showed the building of models. So here we also adopted a similar strategy. We said that we want to predict and we don't want to phenotype. These are two different things. We wanted to predict in future, I mean, 6 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours ahead of time to get that window of opportunity to start predicting things. And we started with hemodynamic shock, just as Kamal was talking about. So we are actually in a forecasting scenario, and this is our window of opportunity. This is where we start predicting, and this is where the disease actually had the onset. Now you may ask, how do we know when did hemodynamic shock start? So since we have these data, we can actually calculate the shock index from data itself. So we did not need to rely upon, let's say, charts or notes, which may have a time window error of maybe 12 hours or 6 hours. We don't know, because they may be entered with some lag. So we chose to go directly to data and calculated shock index, and then use that as the time of onset. A modality that we built into these models is thermal imaging, and that's again a part of context. So in addition to what we were doing, we had this hypothesis that, the long story short, we had a thermal imaging equipment at our disposal. We were doing some studies with MIT, and folks said that, what can you do with this in the ICU? So basically, I thought that in our first year medical school, we were taught that check the temperature difference, check for cold extremities in shock. So could we leverage that using thermal imaging? That's what we did. So we hypothesized that thermal imaging should show cold, clammy extremities in shock, and they may actually be caught enough early on to be able to predict shock as well. So we did just that. So you can see that as the patient is recovering from shock, we see that the center to periphery difference in this gradient of temperature actually recovers. So we use that as an existing knowledge. And then we went all automated, where we, so you can see here that in the baby, the center and the periphery are detected using computer vision models. And this was not easy to detect because we are working with thermal images, which are pretty featureless. And then we build these forecasting at 0, 3, 6, and 12 hours ahead of time. So I'll quickly, this was published in Nature Scientific Reports in 2019, where we were able to predict up to 12 hours ahead of time with up to 75% accuracy. And you may ask, is 75% good enough? The counter argument to that is that we don't even have models which serve as ground realities, ground truths, in terms of how much can the clinician predict up to 12 hours ahead of time when it comes to predicting shock. So now we've actually, and this is a study and a review, we have done that in a transcontinental fashion using Mimic and our Safe ICU data to see how much can be actually generalized across settings. I'll skip all these deep learning details, but we're using state-of-the-art models to do that. And Mimic is a database Piyush also mentioned about, and I think Kamal also talked about. I'll skip all this, but it's a huge database, and we just got an acceptance of a similar study which talks about acute hypertensive episode, unlike shock, which is the opposite. So that is in collaboration with our collaborators in Israel as a part of an Indo-Israel DST-funded project, where we detect acute hypertensive episodes ahead of time. So, so context is key, and the models that we build need to be explainable. They need to be, we can do deep learning, but we also need to somehow encode the existing knowledge that is there in the clinical literature into our models. And that is where we have another direction going on in our lab to build explainable models. Because we can build all these deep learning models, but if the clinicians don't trust it, they don't see why that decision was taken, there's a fair chance that that model may not actually make its way into the clinic. Long story short, we are building software. We have built software for building explainable models, which make these decisions transparent. One of these was actually published way back in 2015 in a large data set which we had collected in a public health setting on about 2 lakh patients collected across India on a single day. And that in that we built models called Bayesian decision networks, and showed in a very explainable way that if we had actually intervened on providing clean cooking fuel, we would actually bring down the rates of COPD or obstructive airway disease by half. So we built our own software, which is called Wiser. I'm not talking about that today, but it's all open source and you can go and see that. This is the kind of output we see. Finally, in the last couple of slides that I'll be talking about, I want to talk about the power of nudges. And Kamal talked about that, and Ashish also said about that. If you don't intervene, you can provide all the models, but if you don't give if the clinician is not taking an action on that, it's unlikely it'll lead to an outcome. So right now, what we are doing is with all these models, which are explainable from different standpoints. For example, we may start from a clinical knowledge. For example, the shock models that we said, or we may start from a black box model and try to make it interpretable. What we want to do now is to go one step beyond to provide nudges. And that comes from the nudge theory, which is a Nobel Prize winning in economics theory from Richard Taylor, and also in medicine that's coming up, that in an encouraged trial by Intermountain, nudges were personalized using machine learning based upon patient's psychographic profile. We are not going to patient, but we are sticking to clinicians. And I was very happy to see when Kamal presented his study, and congratulations for the acceptance for that intervention. So I think that's also what we are currently doing at our Safe ICU at AIMS, trying to see whether nudges actually make a difference with our AI models. So that's ongoing at our Safe ICU. Also, going forward, I think we need to build a little bit of empathy, which is the next frontier, with not only the patient, but also with the clinicians. That means that we essentially need to empathize with the context and to bring in some of the components that we deliver as clinicians. I am not a practicing clinician anymore, but bringing that context where the clinician brings in that empathy with the patient and is able to deliver much better care as opposed to an algorithm which is totally disconnected. That's the next frontier. We have not embarked into it yet, But I think that's where we should collaboratively look forward to going forward in that. So to summarize, we need to create a network across the globe of bridges. Since we are social beings, we need to preserve the context, especially in medicine. Causal models, I spoke about it in a very fleeting manner, but I think causal models is key, which tell why was the decision taken and not just to take a decision, and then develop new methods that can encode reciprocity between the model and the clinician and developing an empathy between the two. So I'll stop here. I would like to acknowledge my students, especially also the faculty colleagues that I've been working with, Professor Rakesh Lodha at the Department of Pediatrics at AIIMS, New Delhi, without whose support all the Safe ICU work would not have been possible. So this work was supported by the Wellcome Trust DPT India Alliance, and I and Professor Lodha have been working together in that project for the last 5 years, and also to my team, also to my funders, India Alliance, and also to my institute, IIIT Delhi, and to Stanford, where we built some of these explainable intelligence models when we were developing these. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for overshooting a bit. I'll stop here.
Dr. Sethi, thank you so much. It's a very nice talk, and I guess all three talks are very appropriate, sort of fed into each other. Piyush laid a foundation, Kamal gave us some examples, and Dr. Sethi came up with a real-world scenario, several real-world scenarios, and great work, by the way, with the work in Delhi with the pandemic. It's wonderful to see you so involved. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mishra. Dr. Mishra, if you have some comments and comments from my esteemed colleagues at ISCCM, and then we'll go from there.
Ashish, what I'll do, first I will one by one ask our expert to comment one by one, and then we will conclude. So I think because Subhal did not get chance to talk and he has to go. So Subhal, what is your take, whatever we spoke, and where do you see AI helping us in ICU? So your comment.
Yeah, thank you, Rajesh. I congratulate all the three speakers and Ashish and you for arranging this excellent webinar. All the three talks were phenomenal, fantastic. They were really an eye-opener how artificial intelligence and big data analysis is really going to help us, and that is going to be the real future. I could also see that, yes, definitely the sensitivity, specificity, the way Dr. Sethi showed that how the fluid optimization, how hemodynamic management, and how the fluid optimization is done in a much more better way by artificial intelligence, with almost a 66%, 2/3 of these patients were given an exact precise kind of fluid optimization vis-a-vis as compared to the doctor center. So definitely artificial intelligence has played a big role as far as the diagnosis of these patients. It is also into by analyzing the x-rays as well as the CT scans, also for analyzing how the various technologies as far as evaluation into these COVID patients, but also into the non-COVID areas as far as optimization of patients, even how the antibiotic policies, antibiotic strategies. And I'm sure if once you have a collection and the use of artificial intelligence, I'm sure a large number of more analysis, and it will also help us to design and plan certain new strategies and help us to plan certain new guidelines. So it is the real future, and it's really changed the perspective. And I'm glad that ISCCM has taken the initiative, and it also invited Ashish to play a big role, and we have had a webinar on this topic. It was a great learning experience from all the three talks.
Thank you. Pradeep, your turn. Pradeep Rangappa. Few comment and your suggestion.
I think congratulations, guys. I think as Subhal said, excellent talk. I think it gave us a lot of insight into what we can look forward to for the future of intensive care. I think it is it's quite delighting to know that Tavpritesh is within India, and he's collaborating with people in Cleveland. So I think it's about time Rajesh and our Honorable President and Srinivas who are here. I think we have to collaborate with these clever people and try to see how we can generate good research assignments for our ISCCM, Rajesh. I think that would be a great way to take this forward, because I think Tavpritesh has a lot of ideas and he's already been working with All India Institute with various models. So I think our ISCCM research committee can look into collaborating and take up a nice sort of a subject and try to develop our own AI model and come out with publications, Rajesh. I think it will be a great way forward, is my interim thoughts. And as Kamal has already shown in his excellent talk as to how it can influence our clinical management also, albeit we do not know whether it has a great bearing on our outcome benefit. So all in all, I think it's a great way moving forward, and I think collaborating with these clever people here and doing some research projects under aegis of our ISCCM research will be a great way forward, Rajesh. Thanks, Rajesh.
Okay. Deepak?
Yeah, AI is not a new thing for critical care. As far as I remember, I put the ECG reading as a AI, because in majority of the ECG machines, they give the analysis, they tell you that interpretation as well. So whether this change is MI or ischemia or blah, 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 so many interpretations. So that is the smallest use of AI in critical care. But I totally agree with Dr. Subhal and Dr. Pradeep that these 3 lectures were an eye-opener. And what I say, for AI use in critical care, sky is the limit. So definitely society will ponder this thought and will move forward to have some collaboration in AI, and we can put some time and energy into this so that our student can come up with the research projects. Like I have seen the ultrasound machine which are using AI immensely. They are giving the data, they are predicting the models, and I have seen few literature where the AI can be used in ultrasound to guide the procedures as well. So AI will tell you that image is right or wrong. You have to tilt your probe to 10 degrees more, or you have to move your probe this direction. So all these things is a small thing, like he has discussed beautifully the use of AI in the hemodynamics. So it's a sky is the limit. We can go and we can discuss these things but for a long time, but the best part will be how to utilize it in our country where the resources are little limited. But the thing is that we have got a vast population, so we can give the basic data where the AI can start learning. So what they have said, the big data and machine learning, those fundamentals can be done in India easily because we have got a big data. And unless we feed that big data into AI system, the prediction model will not help because they need some basic data also.
Okay, I have a question anyone can answer. Looking to the current scenario of Corona, I will need the perspective of both sides. Where could you have thought AI could have helped if you would have enough data, that particularly in picking those patients where we are getting late in giving remdesivir or giving tocilizumab? I see a big role if we have enough data to predict that module where I can use this medicine appropriately and save more patients. So maybe one side, maybe Dr. Mathur or Dr. Maheshwari can predict, and here Dr. Dhruva can give a reply that how you place this thing. This particularly AI in predicting the early prediction of those patients who are going towards the severity, because particularly the COVID is one condition where patients from mild to going to severe, they are going without any sign, any telltale sign. They are just going to severity. By the time they come to you, their lung is gone, they are hypoxic, still they are very happy. So this is particularly, I see a big opportunity here, and how it can help if somebody can.
Yeah, Rajesh, can I ask one question?
Yeah, sir, please.
Yeah, Ashish, I would like to, because I read in one of the papers or some article that even before the swab test, by doing a PCR, artificial intelligence, just by comparing the X-rays or a CT scans, are quite sensitive and specific enough for diagnosis of COVID itself. So before we pass on to Rajesh's question, I thought whether is this, how much is the sensitivity and specificity of this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Subhal. I guess, I will defer to my radiology colleague. The issue is that CT scans are are definitely non-specific. And the reason they're non-specific, as we all know, is that everyone comments on ground glass opacities. And then as soon as there are ground glass opacities, we all start thinking about COVID. The problem is also that my esteemed colleagues in radiology will put a lot of ground glass opacities in their reads these days because they don't want to miss anyone with COVID. So, which means that we are getting a lot of radiology CT scans read as ground glass opacities, consider viral pneumonia, and AI, the system. If you feed all this into a machine learning system, the machine is only as smart as the information we provided. If we provided a lot of information that says ground glass opacity after ground glass opacity, then the machine will have a problem in discriminating what is COVID and what is not COVID. Piyush and Kamal, do you have any input on that? Piyush, do you know in real world use of radiology to predict?
Because I read some papers in Nature and Science that yes, it did help to diagnose it. It also helped to triage patients of it. And also there was also some article where the Koreans also used artificial intelligence, and that's how the Koreans could really take control of the COVID situation. So that's what I thought. That was the question thought from there.
So,
any other comments, Dr. Sethi or Kamal?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, when we make a general statement that AI did this thing, I think that's a disfavor to the whole community and the AI both. In medicine, we have to look into the biological plausibility, the same causal pathway at the very ground. That, for example, even for remdesivir, the question needs to be answered is that how does it work? Which biomarkers which you think would have gone down or will affect, which is a biological pathway that goes down. Then the question is, do we have biomarkers or inflammatory markers which we can detect early and collect that data and then use that algorithm to predict when up or down is going to happen. So I think I don't have a specific answer, but what I'm trying to get at is in medicine, without biological plausibility and the exact biological mechanisms, we cannot make good predictions. AI overall is that if I put even 10 data points and I can create a model, but it'll be an overfitted model. And that is the problem, that the quality of data, as Ashish and everybody else is mentioning, that if we put unrelated data into the model, the algorithm will still make it a fit and say that it has some predictability because we will make association that I was there and that truck was there. And it will somehow make some association and will predict, but that's not necessarily the right thing. And that is the heart of the explainable AI, is that you start with a good thesis and then you ultimately explain your model also. And so I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Rajesh, please carry on. Sorry to interrupt you because
Dr. Mathur and Dr. Dhruv, my question remains same. How do you address that issue? You are not audible, Dr. Mathur. Dr. Mathur, you are not audible. Yeah, unmute yourself. You're not audible.
You know what? While Piyush comes back, I want to make a quick comment. I want to thank all of you for your feedback on the talks, and the point that Dr. Rangappa and Dr. Govil bring about is really important. Having trained in India all these years ago, I know that there's some great work that is going on. There is a lot of data, and there is a great opportunity to collaborate. I think the biggest issue is how do we clean the data that is available in India, and how do we make it usable? Now, what Dr. Sethi, for example, is doing, and that's why I wanted him here today, is that he should connect with you all and sort of act as that bridge where, I think there is a huge opportunity. Look at what China has done when COVID hit China. There was publication after publication coming out of China and tons of data. And I think in India, we're not fortunately been hit that way, but we're doing all of this great work. But what is happening to the data? And I think the ground reality is we have to first clean the data. Then I don't think we are clever people. I think the technology is clever. We're just trying to use technology. So as long as we have good data, we'll be able to have a great collaboration to work together and actually highlight some of the great work that is being done in India.
Ashish,
can you hear me now, Ashish?
Yeah. Dr. Mathur, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So I want to go back to the question about from Dr. Mishra and Dr. Dixit and try to put that together in many ways. So from the chest X-ray point of view, there have been multiple machine learning models that have been built, and they are available out there. A lot of them are preprint. Some of them have gone to the publication level too. I think this is something that is evolving, just like COVID. This is something that is evolving. So they do say that they have good prediction value, but I still think they need stronger validation. They need multi-center validation to say that yes, this is a good predictive value for sure. I think in science, just like all of us as scientists, before we believe it and adopt it, we do need to see that validation beyond one center or beyond one particular place and all. But I look at that as the opportunity. So if you think about the opportunity, I think Dr. Chaudhary had mentioned that we are looking, or somebody else on the panel had mentioned that we are looking at voice samples to detect somebody might have COVID. Then you're looking at chest X-ray to do that. Then somebody is doing a PCR to look at that. Then somebody is looking at lymphocytes to detect that. Then somebody else is looking at D-dimer. Now imagine this. You have a machine learning model that you have built now, which is looking at all these different levels of data, which might help build a better and more accurate prediction, not just overall, but also maybe a better personalized prediction for individuals. So I think that's where the true opportunity is, to leverage this data, which in a way that we have not thought before. Just like Kamal showed, for a long time period, we have managed hemodynamics with like systolic blood pressure, mean arterial pressure and all. What about other indices? We have understood SVV. We have understood all these volume or pressure variable indices and all. I think there's a lot more that we can harness through this and make it interpretable and make it serve our needs in a better way. So I think that's where the opportunity is. And then pairing it up with therapeutics, which is to be able to predict that which patient will benefit from one particular therapeutics or not, whether it's remdesivir, whether it's something else. And especially in a country like India or even in US, deliver those therapeutics in a cost-effective manner and something that is done in a judicious way. So those are some of my thoughts.
Dr. Chaudhary sir, your comment. Dr. Dhruva sir, your comment to the
Yeah. I've been listening very patiently, and in fact, I agree with most of the comments which have been made. But the problem is when we talk in terms of data cleaning, you see, if you look at it, EMR is a part and parcel of your corporate sector. In the government, in the public sector, where data is huge, we usually now getting into that. And the question is to pick up the right information on data, whether you want it to say it's clean, because what question you are asking, if you don't have a data for that, you will not be able to reach it. Now today, I know people contacted me for AI thing and looking at an X-ray predictions and all, fine. Because we need to know the limitations of the technique, because everything you are practicing in medicine, in contextual form, like the same X-rays or same CTs, if there is an epidemic of influenza, you start interpreting that way. I think therefore the context in which you are interpreting the data is very, very important. I think that is number one, which we need to look at it. And that's where your predictive values, the start, etc., they start coming up. That is one part I want to make. Secondly, when we are using a data, at the same time, it is creating its own problems. And sometimes what I was listening very interestingly, and practically if you look at it today, as a part of AI algorithms, everything you do is a health data. Literally looking at it, if you look at the Google, it is looking at it, how you move, your actions, the people can identify everything, looking at your heart rate, your pulse rate. So probably looking simply from that data, people even can predict who you are. If I'm not wrong, please correct me. That's what people are getting worried with, that part of it. So one problem I'm putting it up with, one is using it, and another is are not we creating another monster in terms of practically intruding into day-to-day. That's again, we have to be very, very careful. Like we are very happy to wear an Apple Watch, or we are very happy to have a Google, or same thing in Indian context, which has happened with your Arogya Setu, where we are finding that the people have it. So data is there, data is coming up there. The contextual form we must not forget. And then I was looking at the use of AI in clinical practice. Now, when you're buying new monitors today, you know indirectly it's the algorithms which are running up. Your ventilators algorithms are running up even without even our realizing it, what we are looking at it. I think being a hardcore public sector teaching this thing, and I'm certain in the Cleveland and other places, is that somewhere we have to incorporate it into the medical education system. Already there information overload. The question is, it's very interesting. When I looked at it, the tabs, the qualifications, and a person from science, from MBBS doing and going into hardcore mathematics and data, it reminds me only two persons. One is Anurag Agarwal at IGIB. I think he has been there, so he must be knowing. He's the director of Institute of Genomics and Integrated Biology. And the second man who I look up to is Dr. Ashish Agarwal, who is heading pulmonary medicine at PJ Chandigarh. So they are the people where I have seen how they have been using that data to predict. It's not only critical care, but practically it is making a difference now. Question is, does it make difference in outcomes? That's a big question. Getting data, getting values is one part. But is it going to make difference in terms of outcome? That's what we are looking as a clinician. And you put a question of remdesivir, tocilizumab in the COVID context. The question for me first will be in which particular individual I do expect to pick it up. Is it better than your clinical acumen or not? If it does better, which consistently it is showing, especially where you have a digital data, in particular visual algorithms where you have it in terms of like in pathology, picking it up. It is proven to be a big boon, but in the clinical context, that's what I'm saying. So everything will be depending upon it, how you are entering the data, have you cleaned and then put it into it. For me, because that is as a clinician, I will be looking for. I may be repetitive, but this is what we are looking at it, and that's how we have to decide. For me, it's not a question of remdesivir or a tocilizumab. This, for me, it's an important issue right now is which patient I can think so that I start the drugs right at the beginning. Well, this 10% are the people who are landing up in the trouble. I will not like them to go to that extent. So as a clinician, I will like to that, a preemptive one, preemptive strike. So that's what I will AI as of today is good enough for us to give that? I think these are the questions which will come up in the COVID.
Yeah, Pradeep, your turn. Yeah, Pradeep, you have to unmute yourself. Pradeep, unmute. Pradeep, unmute.
Yeah, I have two questions to Tavpreet. The first question is, Tav, does each algorithm need to be constructed independently, or would you have a general template over which incorporating certain algorithm would make it easy? The second question would be, would constructing an algorithm. So I would give an example. See, like we do tele rounds for our COVID, since it's a COVID situation. I have a huge problem with guiding people on ventilatory settings. So if a simple algorithm with your extensive knowledge that you develop, where it would guide a physician, okay, this is an ARDS, this is a compliance, so you tweak this tidal volume, you tweak this. So would that be a very difficult model for us to generate, and would that need a lot of investment with time, effort, and even cost for that matter? So I just need to understand from you, Tav, how do we think we can go about when we're working in such a scenario in a like simple ARDS? I think that would be a very intuitive algorithm that could be fed into a ventilator, which could possibly tell you that, yeah, this is a patient with a high compliance or a low compliance, and this is the tidal volume you need to set, and you are giving a high tidal volume, your plateau pressure is picking up. So this is something which is very practical to our day-to-day sort of a management, and we could make a difference to our patients is what my interim thoughts would be. So over to you, Tav.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, a couple of comments. I think it has been a lovely discussion. Especially, I think Professor Chaudhary, I have trained at IGIB. Professor Anurag Agarwal was my PhD co-supervisor. So yeah, absolutely, we've been working together for a long time. And I also agree with you on the medical education system, I think, which I am also very passionate about, that it needs to be somehow some AI courses or even data courses need to be introduced into the medical curricula. So if any of the esteemed colleagues here are thinking about that direction, please count me in on those discussions as well. Next semester, I'm teaching a course on computing for medicine. We've opened it up for students at AIMS. We can open it up for other students as well. So I think going forward, that's where we would like to increase.
I would love to have you in Rohtak. You're not far away.
Thank you so much. So coming to the question, I think one way, the first question was, do you need to build individualized algorithms for each question? The short answer is yes, but you can borrow understanding across algorithms, but sometimes also across fields. So there's a specific field called transfer learning, where you can transfer the understanding from one question or even one domain to another domain. For example, one image domain to another image domain. So you can definitely transfer some of the knowledge across algorithms, but many a times, so most of the times, the algorithms that we develop end up being very specific to the question in case, and context matters. As Dr. Chaudhary also said, I totally agree with that as well. And what Piyush also said, that's, for example, for the chest X-ray, if you bring in all the context and put all those pieces of information together, it will be a much more powerful algorithm than just looking at the chest X-rays alone. And I don't think that it will be a very difficult task, because the pipelines tend to be very similar. The general thinking in the back end tends to be very similar, as long as we are clear about what the outcomes need to be. Second question was about the ventilator settings. I think if we have the data on outcomes, and I think that's where the clinical colleagues become much more important than data colleagues, that if we are recording some of these things, or even nurses, if they're recording, okay, these were the ventilator settings, and we have some of these things recorded, okay, oxygen saturation fell down, or even if we have on the monitors and data extracted, maybe on a half-hourly or an hourly or a 2-hourly basis. So constructing these correlations from what was happening in the ventilator settings and what was happening to the oxygen saturations should not be too difficult. But again, data would be critical. I'll stop there.
If I may add to that ventilator question, there is some work going on in that space already. And if you read our article about AI in critical care that I'd written along with Dr. Burns, we give some examples and references in that article. And I think it's something that is very interesting to all of us, especially with this COVID-19 pandemic. It becomes even something of greater need. The sensors that are used, to give you an example, to collect that data are not that expensive from off the ventilator. That's not that expensive. So you can use those sensors and collect that data and correlate it with other data like your ABGs or oxygen saturation and monitor data, plus some other information, and I think you can construct that. It's something that is being done, and I would encourage this whole group to look at that and develop something really interesting. And that's the whole idea behind this webinar too, that we should encourage about everyone to think about collaborating and developing some future solutions for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Rajesh, you have to unmute.
Srinivas, are you there?
Yeah, Rajesh, I'm here.
So your third question and any comment quickly, and then we ask Ashish to say something.
Yeah, no questions. I mean, this has been a tremendous learning experience, knowing about the data, its acquisition, and its utilization. My only perspective on this is, if you look at all the evidence in critical care medicine, all the mega randomized controlled trials usually end up with a negative conclusion. the solution or the answer to this problem might lie in pooling the data and using the artificial intelligence, machine learning aspects to actually give us the guidelines for these problems. So in an intensive care unit, there's so much of information that gets generated hour on hour. It's just not the monitors or the ventilators, the dialysis machines, for example, the ultrasound machine, for example, the ECMO machine, for example, a single patient. They will generate tons and tons of information which can actually guide us in what we are supposed to do. So, as has been said by other speakers in the preceding sessions, I think some of these databases, like for example the Mimic3 database, some of these big databases from the United States, from Australia, I think India has got the best potential to generate this kind of heterogeneous data, which will help us in developing prospective algorithms for precision medicine. That's where I think the Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine should step forward, channelize its own teaching centers, along with the other big institutes which have structured programs. Some of the problems we may face is the lack of computerized data collection, like electronic medical records, which are not always available in all the centers, but it can easily be overcome by a more diligent. There is no shortage of workforce for collecting this data in the big teaching institutes. So some kind of hybrid method, those which are electronic medical record capable versus those who do not have this capability, should develop a hybrid method of data collection. And I think if we can develop a purified, although we started off by trying to do that with the Chitra software, Chitra database, it needs fine tuning, it needs to be taken forward. But I think with the help of all the experts and the guidance from all the people whom we have heard this evening, I think the society can benefit and we can take this forward. Rajesh.
Thank you, Srinivas. Before I hand over final comment, just very quickly what I thought about AI. As a human being, we have a tendency to do mistakes. As a human being, we have a limitation to remember and learn, and we get tired. So AI definitely is going to help us, support us appropriately, and reduce our mistakes. Critical care is an area where we need lots and lots of precision, which we are not able to achieve, which I see AI to help us. Critical care patients are prediction model, which can predict me early predicting the sepsis, early predicting the development of multi-organ failure, early prediction of shock, or those patients who are at risk of getting hospital-acquired infection. These are the area where we need to do a lot of work. And if we get data and predict those patients and prevent the development of complication, where AI is probably going to help us in reducing the cost, improving survival, and treating those patients early where we miss the train. So probably there was a thought that AI is probably going to replace us, but that's not going to happen. But we definitely need AI to help us in predicting the complication early, diagnosing early, precising our treatment in appropriate set of patients. Because so far, as Srinivas was saying, so far we failed in a lot of a randomized controlled trial. And one of them has been that trials have been very generalized. It's not a precise. So probably these pools of data will help us in being so precise that this set of patient matches and this set of treatment matches best for this patient. So we see a lot of changes, probably 5 years or 10 years down the line. This will be the new critical care and it's not far away. So that's what my take is for that. Dr. Mathur, your final comment and then we can close it.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think this has been a great partnership. So I do want to congratulate and thank all the panelists on this and the speakers. I hope this was at least a great starting point. I think some of the high level viewpoints, I think it was at least that discussion, at least that overview was helpful. I do think we need to start thinking differently. From our traditional models, we need to start thinking differently. I do think there is a great opportunity to collaborate. And, Dr. Chaudhary, you said like Tavpritesh is just an hour away. Well, with this, you can see we are even closer. We are just a few seconds away. So we are all reachable, and there are great opportunities for us to collaborate. And I think in Indian context or otherwise, just like Tav showed, and some of the other thoughts over here in the panel, we need to think outside EHR data, and we need to think about how to leverage our existing resources. I think some great comments from Dr. Srinivas about all these sources of data that we could leverage. And at the end of the day, we have to solve these problems for ourselves and for our patients. It's up to us. We have to design these solutions for ourselves, and there are these great opportunities. So those are my parting thoughts. Thank you very much.
So if any comment, otherwise we close. Anybody?
Yeah, thanks,
Rajesh.
It has been. Srinivas, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, sir. Just
please,
started.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, Rajesh, I'm looking at AI and ML as a paradigm shift. We have always believed that randomized controlled trials are the pinnacle of evidence-based medicine. But if you look at those trials and the kind of people they include in the trials, randomized controlled trials, my perspective is they end up creating a huge outlier effect. You can't apply the data to a good proportion of your patients whom you see in your day-to-day practice. Now, that problem of outlier phenomena may be solved or may be addressed by ML and big data analysis and AI. This is my perspective, sir. Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Absolutely not. I think what you're saying is very true. But looking at it, when we looked at it today, I just wanted to share with it what you're saying. We did a computational analysis with the National Chemical Lab, CSIR. And I shared it with you people also, and we did it in a preprint. But again, what we found out, the drugs which we are using are redoing it. Again, it's a use of computational mathematics. And AI is nothing else but when you look into the machine learning, if I'm wrong, please correct me. It's the same thing to an extent. You can call different names, etc. And out of the 70 antiviral drugs, when we did it at the NCL and the Intox by Anita Chugh and the other company, which we are collaborating, you will be surprised. The drug which is at the top on that mathematical modeling, because you talked about RCT, is your daclazavir and liduasovir. Nobody is talking about daclazavir and liduasovir in the use of COVID. One. Secondly, I have been asking all the top hepatologists of the country, Deepak knows it, I'm very fond of it, how many of hepatitis C patients who are on these drugs you have seen with COVID? I'm putting that question to Mr. Mathur also. And I put that question to Ashish also. Third question is that the people who are having an HIV, those who are on protein inhibitors and integrase inhibitors, how many COVID you are seeing? Answers are there, we need to look at it. Because these things are there, and that's what I'm saying. That's where the artificial intelligence, even if it is there, if you don't want to see it, won't help you. So for me, my thing is, for me, the fundamental change, industry is adapting much easily. Private sector is adapting much easily. The biggest challenge for artificial intelligence in Indian context is not the engineering colleges. Government of India funding it, their tab is good enough to move in IIIT or other places. It is in the states, which are the very big base, where we need to change it. And I think we need to get out of that mindset that this is expensive. I think this is where the investment has to go for the future. And the people who need to change there are sitting at the state of powers, who are the professors, who are in the policy making. They need to put it right now in the curriculum, not only for the medicine, but otherwise also to find out cost-effective solutions in the country.
Okay.
Sorry, I started my dinner.
That's really nice of you. And in fact, it was very relaxing discussion. We were not, we were in little ease. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Mathur, Ashish, Dr. Tao, and Dr. Maheshwari for being with us.
Thank you.
And making this happen, because it's just a small beginning and it's a long way to go. And it will be a long-term collaboration, and at least for next 3-4 years, we'll continue to work. We need some formal guideline, some formal proposal from your side also how to go ahead. And all the important people are sitting over here. So I think it can be taken away. It will be good for everybody of us because we are in the learning curve of this thing.
I will just interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
I will quote Gandhi here. You have to start local. When you start locally, looking at the challenges, then probably Dr. Mathur and Ashish and the colleagues can be of help. They can think in terms of good collaboration, but end of the day, it is the horse who has to go and drink it and we have to start it. I think that's very, very important because when we sit on the webinars and sit on the conference circles, it looks very good. It will not be easy to change the mindset of the organizations, but I think we need to start. I hope Tav will agree with me what I'm saying.
So that was the purpose, sir, totally, that at least we wanted that it should be scratch, at least it should start and we take it forward ahead.
Just one comment. As Dr. Chaudhary said, sir, we are all local, and I can't quote Gandhi, but I'll say, "Phir bhi dil hai Hindustani."
No. Dr. Mathur, not even for a minute what you are saying. Point I am saying when I say local, it means I have to start from Rohtak, has to come from Ahmedabad. Only then the Cleveland or the or anywhere else can come and help us out. So first we have to start here. Then you will give us a push so that then we move ahead with it. I think that's very important, and I hope Kamal will also agree with that. What I am saying, I think that's very, very important. And I am seeing the wind of changes, especially in the youngsters which are coming up, and you will be surprised. It is the final year students which are giving us the answers, not the people or professors or assistant or your senior people. They are the one who are the tech savvy we need to promote, we need to use. I think that's a very rich resource, and you and Kamal are the classical examples along with Ashish going out and making a name for it. So I think catch them young, but think local, go abroad and help us out. We will definitely looking at it. But what we know, because sometimes local problems pull you down. That is very important to build it up. That's my mean. दिल हिंदुस्तानी है तभी तो साहब आज बढ़िया बात हो रहा है, अच्छा लग रहा है. And it's so great to meet all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Tav, it's an open invitation for Rohtak any point of time.
Thank you so much, sir. Wonderful speaking with everyone. It was. I think. I hope we will be working together in the future. Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you for being here, and have a great day in USA, and good night to all of you in India. And thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Bye bye.